The family meeting was scheduled for Sunday afternoon, and the moment Dad said the words family meeting, I should have known something was wrong. In our family, meetings were never discussions. They were announcements. Decisions already made, wrapped in the illusion of togetherness. I sat on Mom's floral couch, holding a cup of coffee that had already gone lukewarm. Across the room, my brother Eric paced near the fireplace, wearing that familiar, satisfied expression. The one he had when things were already decided in his favor. Shannon sat beside him, calm, observant, one hand resting on her stomach. "Thank you all for coming," Dad began, standing stiffly like he was addressing a boardroom. "We need to discuss the downtown apartment situation." My heart sank. The downtown apartment. 1247 Westbrook. The two-bedroom unit I had lived in for 4 years. The place Grandpa bought in 1987. The place I called home. "Eric and Shannon are expecting their first child," Dad continued. "They need more space than their current one-bedroom. Meanwhile, Cassie, you have 2 bedrooms all to yourself." "I use the second bedroom as a home office," I said carefully. "I work remotely 3 days a week." "You can work from a coffee shop," Mom said dismissively. "Young people do that all the time." Eric finally stopped packing. "Come on, Cass, don't make this difficult. You're single, no kids. You've got a good job, you can rent anywhere." "And we can't afford market rent," Shannon added softly. "You can." "My salary is not a family topic," I said, my jaw tightening. "When it affects family resources, it is," Dad replied firmly. "The apartment belongs to the family trust. Your grandfather intended it to serve family needs. Right now, Eric and Shannon need it most. We've decided you'll move out by the end of the month." "You've decided," I repeated. "The family has decided," Dad corrected. I stood up slowly. "Then I'd like to see the trust documents, the deed, and any paperwork that gives you the authority to remove me." Dad's face hardened. "You don't need paperwork. I'm telling you as your father and as the trust manager." "Then as the legal resident," I said evenly, "I'm formally requesting documentation." Mom's voice rose. "Why are you being so difficult? This is family helping family." "Then paperwork shouldn't be a problem." I left the meeting with their irritation following me. By the time I reached the apartment they wanted to take, my phone was flooded with messages. 17 texts. Selfish, ungrateful, breaking Mom's heart, Eric calling me dramatic. I ignored them all and opened my filing cabinet. 4 years earlier, Grandpa had called me to the hospital. Just me, no one else. He was weak, but his eyes were sharp. "The apartment building," he'd said, gripping my hand. "I'm changing the trust. Your father thinks he controls everything, but he never reads details." "Grandpa, you should rest." "Listen," he said firmly. 1247 Westbrook goes to you. Direct transfer, effective upon my death. The paperwork is filed." "Why me?" I whispered. "Because you asked me what I wanted. Because you visited every week. Because I trust you." He died 2 weeks later. A month after that, his attorney sent me the amended trust documents and the deed. Sole ownership. My name. No family trust. Dad had received copies too. He just never read them. For 4 years, I managed the building quietly. 6 units. I paid taxes, insurance, maintenance. I upgraded systems, fixed roofs, handled tenants. The rental income covered everything and built reserves. The building Grandpa bought for $340,000 was now worth over $2 million. And now, my family wanted to evict me from my own property. Monday morning, I called my attorney. "They're trying to evict me," I said. Patricia Chin listened carefully. "Do they know you own it?" "They think it's still in the family trust." "Then they have no authority. If they try to force you out, they're breaking the law." "They're already packing my things." "That's illegal entry," she said sharply. "What do you want, Cassie?" "Firm legal boundaries." By Wednesday, panic had started spreading. Patricia sent formal notices, cease and desist letters, warnings of illegal eviction, trespassing, and theft. Thursday, we met again in Dad's office. The power had shifted. "Explain this," Dad said, sliding the letter across the desk. "The building is mine," I replied calmly. "Grandpa transferred it to me before he died." "That's impossible. You didn't read the amendment." He pulled out the file. Mom read over his shoulder. "The residential building at 1247 Westbrook Avenue is transferred to Cassandra Morrison." The room went silent. "You've been collecting rent?" Dad asked. "Yes." "From family property." "My property." Shannon spoke. "But we need that apartment, the baby." "There are other apartments," I said, "at market rate." "We can't afford that." "That's not my responsibility." Eric slammed his hand on the desk. "Grandpa wouldn't have wanted this." "He did," I replied. "That's why he put it in writing." Friday was the breaking point. I walked into my apartment and found Eric inside again. Boxes were stacked near the door. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Helping you pack," he said. "We're moving in anyway." "Leave," I said. "Now." "Or what?" I called the police. When the officers arrived, Eric tried to argue. The documents shut him down. "Sir," the officer said, "you are trespassing. Leave immediately. If you return, you will be arrested." I changed the locks that same afternoon. Dad escalated. He filed a court petition claiming Grandpa was manipulated and incompetent. 3 months of court followed. Medical records proved Grandpa was lucid. Attorney testimony confirmed everything. The timeline destroyed Dad's claims. The judge's ruling was final. The trust amendment is valid. Ownership of 1247 Westbrook Avenue remains with Cassandra Morrison. Petition dismissed. Dad tried to speak. The judge stopped him. "This court will not overturn a legal estate decision because it displeases you." After court, Dad said quietly, "This is tearing the family apart." "No," I replied. "Your need to control everything is." Then came the consequences. Dad tried to use the building as collateral for a loan. The bank flagged it as fraud. He contacted tenants. A court injunction stopped him. Audits uncovered irregularities in his other properties. Penalties followed. One property had to be sold to cover fines. No drama. No shouting. Just paperwork, orders, and signatures. Eric was charged with criminal trespass. Shannon stepped back. The family fell silent. A year later, I stood on the terrace of 1247 Westbrook. The building was fully renovated. Tenants were stable. Accounts were clean. Grandpa's photo hung in my office. "You trusted me," I said softly. He hadn't given me power. He had given me responsibility. And I honored it. Because real justice doesn't shout. It stands quietly. And it lasts. The apartment they tried to give away was never theirs to give. And now everyone knew. I thought that would be the end of it. Court had spoken, papers were stamped, silence had fallen. But silence doesn't mean acceptance. Sometimes it just means people are planning their next move. 2 weeks after the court ruling, I received a certified letter at my office. Not from Dad, not from Eric, from a law firm I didn't recognize. The tone was aggressive, formal, confident in the way only desperation tries to disguise itself. They were threatening a civil suit, claiming emotional distress, claiming familial coercion, claiming I had used undue legal pressure to humiliate my father and brother. I read the letter twice, then I handed it to Patricia. She sighed, not worried, tired. "They're fishing, they've lost control everywhere else." "Let them fish," I said. "I'm done being quiet." That was the moment everything shifted. Until then, I had only defended myself. Now I chose to assert. Patricia filed a preemptive response within 48 hours. Not defensive, surgical. Counterclaims. Harassment. Repeated trespass. False representation to financial institutions. Intentional interference with property management. Every action Dad and Eric had taken out of arrogance was now neatly listed, dated, documented. And then something unexpected happened. One of Dad's former business partners reached out to me. "I don't want trouble," he said on the phone. "But after what came out in court, auditors are asking questions. Your father used your building's projected value in multiple negotiations over the years." That stopped me cold. Used how? As implied collateral, not officially, but verbally, as leverage. That single sentence detonated everything. Patricia's tone changed when I told her. "Cassie, this isn't just family drama anymore. This is systemic misrepresentation." The investigation that followed was not loud. No sirens. No headlines. Just quiet professionals opening files that hadn't been opened in years. Dad was called in for questioning. Then again. Then again. Eric tried to distance himself, claimed ignorance, claimed he was just following Dad's lead. That didn't help him. Emails surfaced. Texts. Messages where he talked about forcing Cassie out and fixing paperwork later. One afternoon, Mom came to my office unannounced. She looked smaller than I remembered, older, tired in a way sleep doesn't fix. "I didn't know it would go this far," she said. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I just spoke plainly. "It went this far because nobody stopped when they should have." She nodded slowly. "Your father always believed authority came from being the loudest." "I believe it comes from being right," I replied. Weeks passed. Dad's legal counsel withdrew. Then Eric. Settlements were discussed, quietly, nervously. In the end, Dad signed an agreement. No admission of guilt, but full withdrawal of all claims. Permanent no interference clause. Financial penalties paid in installments. Mandatory compliance audits on his remaining assets. Eric signed too. A separate document. No contact. No claims. No access. When the final signatures were filed, Patricia called me. "It's done," she said, "completely." I didn't celebrate. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt light. Months later, I hosted a tenant appreciation gathering in the courtyard of 1247 Westbrook. Simple food, soft lights, people laughing, people who felt safe where they lived. One tenant pulled me aside. "You know," she said, "this building feels different, like it's owned by someone who actually cares." I smiled. That was always the plan. That night, alone in my office, I looked at Grandpa's photo again. He hadn't chosen me because I was strong. He chose me because I was steady. And steadiness, when tested, becomes unbreakable. The people who tried to take everything from me lost more than property. They lost credibility. They lost authority. They lost the right to decide my life. Not because I attacked them, but because I refused to bend. And that was the real ending they never expected. Everyone thought the matter was closed. Signed agreements, silent withdrawals, legal distance. But closure on paper doesn't mean closure in people's minds. 3 months after the final settlement, I received an unexpected call from the City Housing Authority. Not a complaint, not a notice, a request. "Ms. Morrison," the officer said politely, "your building has been flagged as a model property. We're reviewing owners for a pilot program focused on long-term affordable housing incentives. Your management record stood out." I listened carefully. For years, Dad had spoken about power as control. This was something else. This was influence. I agreed to the review. Inspectors came. Files were checked, maintenance logs, tenant feedback, financial transparency, everything passed, not barely, cleanly. A week later, I was officially approved. Tax incentives. Priority permits. City-backed improvement grants. 1247 Westbrook wasn't just protected now. It was elevated. That news traveled faster than any lawsuit. I found out when Eric emailed me. Not a demand this time, not anger, just short, unsure sentences. "Didn't know you were doing all this. Didn't know the city was involved. Guess Grandpa really knew what he was doing. I didn't reply. Some conversations don't need answers. Silence can be more instructive than argument. Then came Dad's call. I almost didn't pick up. His voice was different, not commanding, careful, measured. I heard about the city program, he said. Congratulations. Thank you, I replied. A pause stretched between us. You always were organized, he said finally. I just didn't think you'd go this far. I didn't go far, I said. I went correctly. Another pause, longer this time. I lost more than I expected, he admitted quietly. You didn't lose it because of me, I replied. You lost it because you treated responsibility like entitlement. He didn't argue. That told me more than any apology could. Winter came, then spring. The building thrived. Vacancy rates dropped. Tenants renewed early. The reserve fund grew. I hired a small local team, paid fairly, trained properly. I stopped managing invisibly. My name appeared on city panels, housing forums, property management discussions. People asked how I kept things stable without squeezing tenants. The answer is boring, I said once. You follow the law, you listen, and you don't confuse ownership with ego. Behind the scenes, Dad's world kept shrinking. His remaining properties stayed under audit. Banks tightened terms. Former partners kept distance. Nothing dramatic, just doors quietly closing. One evening, Mom visited again. This time she looked calmer. I see it now, she said, looking around my office. You didn't fight the family. You outgrew the chaos. I nodded. I had to. She hesitated. Do you think someday we could be normal again? I chose my words carefully. Normal doesn't mean going back. It means respecting boundaries. She accepted that. Later that night, alone, I stood by the window of my office. The city lights reflected off the glass. The building was quiet, secure. Grandpa hadn't given me this place to win battles. He gave it to me because he knew I wouldn't need to fight loudly to stand firm. The people who tried to overpower me had faded into footnotes. Not erased. Just irrelevant. And I believed relevance was the last thing they had left to lose. I was wrong. Power doesn't always disappear quietly. Sometimes it makes one last, reckless move. It started with a notice taped to the building's front door. A routine-looking document. City seal. Inspection order. But the timing was wrong. I called the housing authority immediately. The officer on the line sounded confused. We didn't issue this, she said. That order number doesn't exist in our system. That was the moment I knew. Someone was trying to manufacture pressure. Patricia arrived within an hour. She didn't touch the notice, didn't read it twice. She photographed it, smiled slightly, and said, "This is bad for whoever did this." Forgery. False representation of a government authority. Criminal, not civil. We didn't pull the notice down. We let it hang. Hidden cameras caught everything. At 9:40 p.m., Eric showed up, hoodie, baseball cap. He looked around, checked his phone, and peeled the notice off the glass. Clear as day. The next morning, Patricia filed the report. Evidence attached, video timestamped, metadata intact. Eric was summoned for questioning within 48 hours. This time he didn't posture, he didn't threaten, he panicked. He claimed Dad told him to handle it. Dad denied involvement. Phone records contradicted him. Calls, messages, instructions. The investigators didn't raise their voices. They didn't need to. Silence and documentation did the work. Forgery charges were filed. Obstruction added. Violation of an active no-interference agreement. That last one mattered, because it triggered an automatic clause in the settlement Dad had signed. Immediate financial penalties. Accelerated payments. Loss of negotiated protections. Dad's attorney tried to intervene. The court refused. Your client waived discretion when he violated the agreement, the judge said calmly. Eric took a plea. Probation. Mandatory compliance training. A permanent mark on his record that would surface every time he tried to present himself as a business professional. Dad didn't go to jail. Something worse happened. The court appointed an external administrator to oversee his remaining assets, not seizure, supervision. Every decision reviewed. Every transaction approved. Every illusion of control gone. When Dad came to see me after that, there was no anger left. He sat across from me, hands folded, eyes tired. I thought authority meant people moved when I spoke, he said. It does, I replied, when they respect the system you're speaking through. He nodded, slowly, finally. That was the last private conversation we ever had. Time passed, quietly, properly. 1247 Westbrook was officially listed as a protected long-term housing asset. Its status was locked, its future stable. I didn't win by shouting. I didn't win by humiliating anyone publicly. I won by letting every rule they ignored turn into a wall they couldn't climb. The law didn't take sides. It took structure seriously. And I stood exactly where structure was strongest. Years later, a junior attorney once asked me how I handled family opposition. I answered honestly. I didn't fight them, I outlasted their shortcuts. Because domination doesn't come from force. It comes from patience, preparation, and knowing the system better than the people trying to abuse it. But the story didn't end with stability. Systems remember. 6 months after the administrator took control, a routine compliance audit uncovered something buried deep inside the old records. Not recent, not flashy, quiet transfers, shell vendors, inflated maintenance invoices from years ago. Legal residue. The kind that doesn't scream until someone finally listens. The administrator flagged it, forwarded it, the state did the rest. This time, it wasn't personal. No family, no emotions to exploit, just numbers that didn't add up and signatures that did. An inquiry turned into an investigation. An investigation turned into a case. Dad wasn't accused publicly. He wasn't dragged into headlines. He was invited to explain. He couldn't. The penalties were surgical: back taxes, civil recovery, disqualification from holding fiduciary authority in any housing-related entity. Permanent. He lost access not because someone hated him, but because the system decided he was no longer safe to trust. Eric tried to distance himself. Too late. His plea agreement required disclosure. Cooperation wasn't optional. Everything closed cleanly. No appeals that mattered, no speeches, no last-minute leverage. Just outcomes. Years later, 1247 Westbrook stood exactly as intended. Families stayed. Leases renewed. The building aged with dignity, not neglect. Sometimes I walked past the front door and remembered that notice still taped there, fluttering slightly in the evening air. Pressure poorly made. That was the difference. People think domination looks loud. It doesn't. It looks like restraint. It looks like timing. It looks like knowing when to let someone finish the mistake they started. I didn't destroy anyone. I let the framework they ignored define them. And when the system finally closed the file, it did so without drama, without doubt, and without reopening it ever again. That is what justice looks like when it's done properly. If you felt the weight of this story and want more narratives where patience beats power, preparation defeats manipulation, and the law speaks louder than threats, then like this story, subscribe for more and stay with me till the end.